This is the story of a woman named Clara, a woman who once believed in love, only to find herself trapped in a nightmare, the name of marriage. But what happens when love turns into pain and the man who vowed to protect her becomes the source of her suffering? Stay with us till the end, because this is a story of what happens around us these days. You won't want to miss a second of it. But before we start, make sure you like this video and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring and eye-opening stories. Your support helps us bring more powerful narratives to life. Clara stood in front of the mirror, staring at her reflection. The woman who gazed back was a ghost of who she used to be. Her once bright eyes, now dull and weary, were shadowed by dark circles. The bruises on her face, faint but unmistakable, told the story of nights filled with fear. She traced a trembling finger over the deep purple mark on her cheek, wincing as she did. How had it come to this? How had her life unraveled into this nightmare? She remembered how her friends have warned her not to get married because of money, but she would play deaf to the advice and warning from her friends and always say, "It's better to cry in a private jet than to be smiling in the trenches." Just when she was lost in thought, a small voice pulled her from her thoughts. "Mommy, are you crying?" Clara turned quickly, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Her daughter Lily stood in the doorway, her tiny frame silhouetted against the dim hallway light. Even at 6 years old, Lily had learned to recognize the sadness in her mother's face. She had seen too much, heard too much. "No, sweetheart," Clara said softly, crouching down to meet her daughter's worried gaze. "Mommy's just tired, that's all." Lily frowned, stepping closer. Her small hands reached up, gently touching the bruise on Clara's cheek. "Did Daddy do this again?" Her voice was laced with innocence, yet her words cut deeper than any wound. Clara swallowed the lump in her throat. What could she say? That everything would be okay? That her father wasn't a bad man? Lies. Lies she had told herself for far too long. "Lily, I told you before," Clara whispered, forcing herself to stay calm. "When Daddy and I are talking, you need to stay in your room and lock the door until I come get you." Lily's eyes filled with tears, her lips trembling. "But I am scared, Mommy." Clara pulled her daughter into her arms, holding her close. "Listen to me, baby. No matter what happens, I love you. I will always be here for you. Do you understand?" Lily nodded slowly, but before she could say anything, heavy footsteps echoed down the hall. The air in the room changed, thick with tension. Clara felt it. So did Lily. Her husband is now awake. "Go to your room now," Clara whispered urgently. Lily hesitated for only a second before obeying, disappearing into the shadows just as the bedroom door swung open. There he stood, in front of her, husband Victor. His eyes were cold, his presence suffocating. "What the hell are you doing?" he muttered, his voice thick with sleep and irritation. Clara lowered her gaze. "Nothing, I was just..." Then a slap came without warning, hard and fast. The impact sent her stumbling against the dresser. A sharp cry escaped her lips as pain bloomed across her cheek. Victor exhaled sharply, as if annoyed by his own actions. "Don't make me late for work," he said flatly before turning away, and slammed shut the front door, leaving Clara standing there, trembling. With shaky legs, she dragged herself to the kitchen. She had breakfast to make, a daughter to send to school, and a life to pretend was normal. But deep inside, she regrets ever getting married to Victor, all because he is rich, and she felt she would have all the best memories in her marriage. Clara's hands trembled as she cracked eggs into the pan, the sizzle echoing in the quiet kitchen. The faint morning light streamed through the cracked blinds, casting striped shadows across the counter. Every sound felt magnified, the bubbling coffee pot, the scrape of a chair, the distant ticking of the clock. It was almost peaceful, almost normal. But nothing in Clara's life had been normal for a long time. Lily sat at the table quietly eating her toast, her little fingers picking at the crust. Her eyes darted toward her mother every few seconds, worry evident in her young face. Clara hated that look. A child should not have to carry such weight. "Eat up, baby," Clara said softly, placing a small plate of eggs in front of her daughter. She forced a smile, but even Lily could see through it. "Mommy," Lily whispered, hesitant. "Are we going to leave?" Clara's heart clenched. She glanced toward the front door as if Victor might burst in at any moment, though she knew he wouldn't be back until evening. The thought of leaving had crept into her mind 1,000 times, but every time she had found reasons to stay, with hope that things might change. Clara hesitated. How could she explain the complexities of abuse to a 6-year-old? The fear, the doubt, the isolation. But before she could form a response, a knock at the door startled her. Her breath hitched. She wasn't expecting anyone. Wiping her hands on a dish towel, she forced herself to move, each step feeling heavier than the last. Peering through the peephole, she let out a shaky breath. It was Grace. Clara hesitated only a second before unlocking the door. Grace, her closest friend, stepped inside quickly, her eyes scanning Clara's face. The warmth in her gaze turned to sorrow as she noticed the fresh bruise on her cheek. "Clara," Grace whispered, reaching out, but Clara flinched involuntarily. "I'm fine," Clara lied, stepping back. Grace sighed, closing the door behind her. "You don't have to keep saying that." Clara turned away, busying herself with the dishes. She didn't want to have this conversation, not now, not in front of Lily. "I saw him at the gas station last night," Grace continued, her voice careful. "He was drunk, Clara, and angry." Clara swallowed hard. She already knew that. She had felt his anger firsthand. Grace lowered her voice. "You don't have to do this alone. Why not go back to your father's house? At least it's safer than being a punching bag to a self-acclaimed husband. Safe." The word felt foreign, like a distant dream. She had convinced herself for so long that there was no way out, but now someone was handing her a lifeline. She glanced at Lily, who was listening quietly, pretending not to. Her daughter, her beautiful, innocent little girl, deserved more than this life of fear and silence. Maybe, just maybe, it was time to run. Clara exhaled, gripping the edge of the sink. The seed of realization from the night before grew stronger. She had to leave, and she had to do it soon. Clara spent the rest of the day preparing for her escape. Every second that ticked by felt like a battle against time. She made sure to act normal, moving through her usual routines as if nothing had changed. She did the laundry, made the beds, and even prepared Victor's dinner, just as she always did. If he suspected anything, he would lash out, and she couldn't risk that. Not now. Her mind raced with possibilities. What if he came home early? What if Lily accidentally said something? What if somehow he found out? She shook the thoughts away. She had to focus. When Lily came home from school, Clara knelt in front of her, gripping her small shoulders. "Sweetheart, we are going on a little adventure tonight, okay?" Lily's brow furrowed. "An adventure? Yes, but we have to be really quiet, like ninjas. We can't let Daddy know. Do you understand?" Lily hesitated, looking into her mother's eyes, and then nodded. "Are we leaving forever?" Clara swallowed the lump in her throat. "Yes, baby, but it's for the best." After dinner, Clara tucked Lily into bed as usual, kissing her forehead. "Close your eyes, my love. I will wake you up when it's time." Lily held her hand. "You promise?" "I promise." She watched her daughter drift into sleep, heart aching at what she was taking Lily away from her home, her toys, her sense of stability. But what kind of stability did they really have in this house filled with fear? Time passed too slowly. Clara sat in the dark, gripping the bag she had packed earlier. Victor hadn't come home yet. He was late, likely drinking with his friends. It was a small blessing. At midnight, Clara gently shook Lily awake. "It's time, sweetheart." Lily yawned but obediently let her mother help her into a jacket and shoes. Clara hoisted the duffel bag over her shoulder, took her daughter's hand, and tiptoed to the door. Every creak of the wooden floor felt like a gunshot in the silent house. Her breath was shallow, heart thundering as she turned the lock on the front door. The night air hit her face like a wave of freedom and fear intertwined. She clutched Lily's hand tighter and stepped outside, carefully closing the door behind them. The taxi she had arranged earlier was waiting at the end of the street, headlights off to avoid suspicion. "Come on, baby," she whispered, and they hurried toward it. The driver, a kind-looking young man, gave Clara a reassuring nod as they climbed into the back seat. "Let's go," she said to the taxi driver. Clara's body trembled as she pulled Lily close, her daughter resting her head on her mother's lap. As the car rolled away, Clara looked back at the house one last time. She wasn't sure what the future held, but she knew one thing for certain. They were never coming back. The car ride was silent except for the steady hum of the engine. Clara kept her arms wrapped around Lily, her heart pounding against her ribcage as she watched the dark streets blur past the window. Every pair of headlights that approached sent a wave of panic through her, but she forced herself to breathe to remember that she was finally taking control. The driver glanced at her through the rearview mirror. "Mum, I don't know what the problem is, but let me assure you that you are doing the right thing," he said gently. Clara could only nod. Her throat was tight, emotions tangled in a knot she couldn't yet unravel. Was she doing the right thing? She was taking Lily away from everything she had ever known, but then she thought about the bruises, the fear, and the nights spent crying silently into her pillow. Yes, this was the right thing. As they drove further from the only home Lily had ever known, her daughter stirred against her. "Where are we going, Mommy?" she murmured sleepily. "To Grandma's house, sweetheart," Clara whispered, stroking Lily's hair. "She's going to help us." Lily nodded against her mother's chest, trusting her completely. Clara envied her daughter's faith. If only she could believe in herself that easily. The driver took a turn onto a dimly lit road lined with small houses. "We are almost there," he announced. Clara's stomach twisted as she spotted the familiar porch light of her mother's home glowing in the darkness. It had been years since she had stood on that doorstep. Would her mother even let her in? Would she say, "I told you so"? As the car rolled to a stop, Clara hesitated. A deep part of her wanted to tell the driver to turn around, to find somewhere else to go. But then she looked down at Lily's peaceful face and knew she had no choice. The driver reached back and gave Clara's hand a reassuring squeeze. "Take a deep breath. You're not alone." Clara exhaled shakily, nodded, and stepped out of the car, pulling Lily along with her. The cool night air sent a shiver down her spine. She walked up the short pathway, her legs trembling with each step. Her hand hovered over the doorbell for a moment before she pressed it. Seconds passed. Then the porch light flickered on, and the door creaked open. Her mother stood there, her silver hair slightly disheveled, her sharp eyes softening the moment they landed on Clara. "Mom?" Clara's voice broke. Tears welled in her eyes, and before she could say another word, her mother pulled her into a tight embrace. "Oh, my baby," her mother whispered, holding her close. "You finally came home." Clara buried her face in her mother's shoulder, sobbing. Years of pain, of regret, of fear, all spilling out in a flood of emotion. Lily clung to Clara's leg, looking up at her grandmother uncertainly. The older woman bent down, opening her arms. "Come here, sweetheart." Lily hesitated only a second before stepping into the warmth of her grandmother's embrace. For the first time in years, Clara felt something she had long forgotten. Safety. Clara sat on the couch, a warm cup of tea cradled in her hands. The scent of chamomile filled the small but cozy living room, wrapping her in a blanket of familiarity. It had been years since she had last sat in this house, but the memories came rushing back like an old song she had forgotten the lyrics to. The floral curtains, the wooden coffee table with scratches from her childhood, and the faint ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. It was all the same. Her mother, Teresa, sat across from her, watching her with cautious yet loving eyes. "You don't have to say anything right now," she said gently, her voice carrying years of wisdom. "Just know that you are safe here." Clara swallowed hard, the warmth of her tea doing little to ease the knot in her throat. "Thank you, Mom," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. She glanced at Lily, who sat curled up, in a blanket, slowly dozing off on the couch beside her. The child had clung to her all night, needing the reassurance that they truly were away from Victor's grasp. Mother Teresa reached out and placed her wrinkled hand over Clara's. "I always told you that you could come home no matter what. I just wish it hadn't taken you so long." Clara looked down, shame creeping into her chest. "I was scared," she admitted. I thought I could fix it. That maybe if I just tried harder, things would get better." Her mother let out a sigh, her grip tightening. "Sweetheart, love isn't supposed to hurt. And trying harder won't change a man who doesn't want to change." Clara nodded, blinking back tears. She had spent years believing that if she was just a little more patient, a little more obedient, Victor would love her the way she had once dreamed. But love wasn't supposed to feel like walking on eggshells. It wasn't supposed to leave bruises on her body and scars on her heart. A knock at the door made them both jump. Clara's breath caught in her throat, fear spiking in her chest. What if Victor had found them? Teresa placed a steadying hand on her daughter's shoulder before standing up. "It's all right," she said reassuringly. She walked to the door, peered through the peephole, and then relaxed. "It's just an old friend." She opened the door to reveal a tall man with kind eyes and a rugged beard. Clara's heart stuttered in recognition. It was Daniel, an old childhood friend who had once been her closest confidant. "Clara," he said, his voice filled with both surprise and relief. "You are back." She nodded, her lips parting, but no words came out. She hadn't expected to see anyone familiar, let alone someone who had once known her so well. Daniel stepped inside, glancing at Teresa. "She called me," he explained. "Said you might need some help." Clara looked at her mother, who simply shrugged. "You are going to need people who care about you." For the first time in a long time, Clara felt the tiniest spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something new. The next morning, Clara awoke to the smell of fresh coffee and the soft chatter of her mother and Daniel in the kitchen. The sunlight streamed through the lace curtains, casting a golden hue over the small bedroom. For the first time in years, she had slept without fear of being woken by a slammed door or angry footsteps. She turned to see Lily still curled up beside her, her tiny hand clutching the edge of the blanket. Clara brushed a stray lock of hair from her daughter's face, her heart swelling with love and determination. This was their fresh start, but the road ahead was still uncertain. Stepping into the kitchen, Clara was met with warm smiles. "Good morning, sweetheart," Mother Teresa greeted, placing a steaming mug in front of her. "How did you sleep?" Clara took a deep breath before answering. "Better than I have in a long time." Daniel, who sat at the table sipping his coffee, gave her an encouraging nod. "That's a good start." As Clara sat down, a wave of unease settled in her stomach. The fear of what came next loomed over her. She had escaped, but the battle wasn't over. "I need to figure out what to do next," she admitted, stirring her coffee absent-mindedly. "Victor, he won't let this go." Mother Teresa frowned, setting a plate of toast in front of her. "He has no power here, Clara. You don't have to be afraid anymore." But Clara knew better. Victor was a man who thrived on control, and losing that control would only make him angrier. "I should talk to a lawyer," she said finally. "I need to protect Lily and make sure he can't come near us." Daniel set his mug down. "I know someone who can help. A good lawyer, someone who specializes in situations like this." Clara hesitated. Asking for help had never been easy for her, but she knew she couldn't do this alone. "That would mean a lot," she said softly, gratitude shining in her eyes. Mother Teresa reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "You are not alone in this, baby. You have people who love you." Tears threatened to spill over, but Clara blinked them back, nodding. She glanced toward the living room, where Lily had now woken up and was rubbing her sleepy eyes. No matter what it took, she would fight for their safety, for their future. The past had haunted her for too long. It was time to take control of her life. Months passed, and Clara had just begun to settle into the rhythm of her new life when the past came knocking. It started with phone calls she didn't answer, then messages she deleted before reading. But when her mother opened the door one evening to find Victor standing on the porch, she knew she could no longer ignore him. He looked different. His face was thinner, his eyes hollow with exhaustion. Gone was the imposing presence that once loomed over her in anger. Instead, he stood with his shoulders slumped, hands wringing as if he didn't know what to do with them. "Clara," he said softly, his voice lacking the sharpness she remembered. "Please, just hear me out." Mother Teresa stood protectively between them. "You have no right to be here," Victor nodded, his Adam's apple bobbing as he swallowed hard. "I know, but I need to fix this. I can't lose them." He turned his eyes to Clara, pleading, "I am not the same man, I swear. I don't know what came over me, it's the handwork of devil. But please, I have been going to therapy. I have been working on myself. I know I hurt you, but I never wanted to. I love you. I love Lily. I just want a chance." Clara's stomach twisted. The words were everything she had once longed to hear, but now, standing in front of him, they felt hollow. How many times had he promised to change before? How many times had she believed him, only to be broken again? As if sensing her hesitation, Victor took a step back. "I didn't come alone," he said, glancing at the driveway. Clara followed his gaze and saw his sister Maria, standing beside their childhood friend, James. Behind them, even more familiar faces lingered, people she had known for years, people who had once turned a blind eye to her pain. Now they stood with solemn expressions, watching, waiting. Maria stepped forward, her hands clasped in front of her. "Clara, I know I didn't do enough before. None of us did. But we see it now. Victor has been trying. He is different now." James nodded. "We are not saying you have to go back, but maybe you can talk to him. Give him a chance to show you." Clara's mind whirled. Was this real? Could a man like Victor truly change? Could the years of hurt and fear be undone by therapy, by regret, by the pleas of family and friends? She looked down at Lily, who clung to her leg, staring at her father with wide, uncertain eyes. Then she met her mother's gaze, steady and unwavering. Mother Teresa didn't speak, but the message was clear. This decision was hers alone. Clara inhaled deeply, then exhaled. "I don't know if I can believe you, Victor," she admitted, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. "But I will think about it." Victor's face flickered with hope. "That's all I ask." As he turned to leave, Clara felt a weight settle in her chest. Forgiveness was complicated, the past was heavy, and the future uncertain. Clara sat in the dimly lit living room, her mind a battlefield of conflicting emotions. Victor's pleas still echoed in her ears, his presence still lingering in her thoughts. He had seemed sincere, changed even, but could she trust it? Could she really return to the life she had fled? Her mother Teresa sat across from her, watching intently. "You are considering it, aren't you?" she finally asked. Clara nodded slowly. "He seems different, Mama. He has been going to therapy. He wants us back." Mother Teresa sighed, setting down her cup of tea. "People can say anything, my dear, but actions speak louder." Clara bit her lip. "What if he really has changed?" Her mother leaned forward, taking her hands gently. If you truly believe that, then let him prove it in the proper way. Clara looked up at her mother, confusion knitting her brows. What do you mean? In our Igbo tradition, Mother Teresa explained, if a woman leaves her husband's house because of domestic violence, she cannot return just like that. If the man wants her back, he must redo all the marriage rites. He must approach the family with honor and humility. That is the only way to show that he truly values his wife and regrets his actions. Clara sat back, absorbing the weight of her mother's words. It made sense. If Victor was truly reformed, he wouldn't just want to fix things with words. He would be willing to go through the traditions, to humble himself before her family, to make things right not just for her, but for their ancestors as well. I am not saying you should go back, Mother Teresa continued, her voice firm yet gentle. But if you decide to, he must follow the right path. If he is truly ready, he will not object. The thought of Victor standing before her uncles and elders, explaining himself, making amends, it was almost unimaginable. But if he was serious about change, about their family, then this would be the ultimate test. Clara nodded slowly. I will tell him. If he really wants us back, he has to redo the marriage rites. Her mother's eyes softened, pride shining through. Good. Let him prove himself. That evening, when Clara finally picked up Victor's call, she told him her decision. There was a long silence on the other end of the line before he finally spoke. I will do it, he said, his voice steady. I will go through the traditions, whatever it takes. I just want my family back. Clara exhaled, relief and apprehension washing over her at once. The journey ahead would not be easy, but at least now, if she was to return, it would not be on blind faith. It would be on the foundation of true commitment. And only time would tell if Victor was truly ready to walk that path. Few weeks later, Victor stood before Clara's mother, his head bowed in humility. The room was quiet except for the soft creaking of the wooden chairs as the elders shifted their weight. The air was thick with expectation. I am ready to do whatever it takes, Victor said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. I understand that I failed as a husband, but I want to make things right. I will go through every tradition, every rite, whatever is needed to bring my wife back home the right way. Mother Teresa watched him carefully. She had seen men make empty promises before, but there was something different about Victor now. Perhaps it was the way he held himself, not with arrogance, but with sincerity. Or maybe it was the way he had humbled himself before the elders, acknowledging his wrongs. You must understand, one of the elders spoke, his voice deep and commanding. In Igbo tradition, when a woman leaves her husband's house due to mistreatment, she does not return the same way she left. If you truly want her back, you must redo the traditional marriage rites. You must honor her and her family as if you are marrying her for the first time. Victor nodded without hesitation. I understand, and I agree. Preparations began immediately. Word spread throughout the village and among family members. The ceremony was set to take place in a month, giving Victor enough time to make the necessary arrangements. He visited Clara's uncles and elders, bringing the customary gifts, cola nuts, palm wine, and money for the bride price. On the day of the ceremony, the compound buzzed with life. Women dressed in vibrant wrappers moved about, preparing food and singing traditional songs. Men sat in groups discussing the significance of the occasion. Clara, dressed in a beautifully embroidered blouse and a flowing George wrapper, sat quietly inside, her heart a mix of emotions. This was not how she had imagined remarrying her own husband, but something about it felt right. This time, she was not walking blindly into a union based on love alone. This time, she was walking in with wisdom and strength. When the time came, Victor stood before the elders once again. He was handed a cup of palm wine, which he took with both hands. Clara's mother led her out, and all eyes turned to her as she approached her husband. Their gazes met, and for the first time in a long time, she saw something in Victor's eyes she hadn't seen before, which is genuine respect. She accepted the cup, took a sip, and handed it back to him. Cheers erupted around them, marking their renewed union. 2 months later, they moved back into their home, cautious but hopeful. They had built a foundation this time, not just of love, but of understanding and respect. When Clara discovered she was pregnant, Victor wept. He held her close, pressing his forehead against hers. "We will do this right," he promised. "For us, for Lily, and for this child." And for the first time in a long time, Clara allowed herself to believe it. 9 months later, the cries of a newborn baby filled the hospital room, piercing through the air like a melody of hope. Clara lay exhausted on the bed, sweat clinging to her brow, but the moment the nurse placed the tiny bundle in her arms, every ounce of pain and fatigue melted away. "It's a boy," the doctor announced with a smile, and the room erupted in cheers. Tears slid down Clara's cheeks as she cradled her newborn son, his tiny fingers curling around hers. Victor stood beside her, his face glowing with pride. He leaned down and kissed her forehead. "You did amazing, my love," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. The news spread like wildfire, and soon their home was filled with family and well-wishers. Clara's mother, Teresa, held the baby with a soft smile, her once doubtful heart now at peace. Maria, Victor's sister, took endless pictures, already thinking of the grand celebration they would hold in the child's honor. Lily, now 4 years old, clapped her hands excitedly. "I have a baby brother," she squealed, her happiness infectious. Everything felt perfect, but perfection was an illusion, and behind Victor's joyful mask, a dark secret festered. For months, while Clara was pregnant with their child, while she endured morning sickness and restless nights, Victor had been cheating on her. Each time he claimed to be away on business trips, he was instead indulging in affairs with other women. Clara, trusting and devoted, never suspected a thing. She had believed in his change, believed in their second chance. She had let him back into her heart, her life, her trust. As the house buzzed with celebration, Victor's phone vibrated in his pocket. He pulled it out discreetly and saw a message that sent a pang of guilt through his chest. "Miss me. Can't wait to see you again." His throat went dry as he quickly shoved the phone back into his pocket, glancing at Clara. She was radiant, holding their newborn son with love so pure, so deep, it made his betrayal feel even heavier. For a brief moment, remorse gripped him. He had everything: a loving wife, beautiful children, a stable home, wealthy. Yet he had risked it all for temptations he couldn't resist. Clara caught his gaze and smiled up at him, her eyes full of love and gratitude. "Victor, look at him. Our son. Can you believe it?" Victor forced a smile and nodded, pressing a kiss to her forehead once more. "Yes, love, he's perfect." But deep down, he knew his sins would not stay hidden forever. Secrets have a way of unraveling, and sooner or later the truth would come knocking. Clara had felt it in her bones for weeks, an unease that refused to leave her. Victor had changed again, but this time it wasn't the warmth of his transformation that she felt. It was something colder, more distant. He worked late more often, took business trips that never added up, and avoided her eyes when she asked questions. One day, a church member told Clara that she saw Victor in a restaurant with a woman who wasn't her. She also showed her a picture of Victor laughing with someone else, his hand resting too familiarly on her waist. Clara dismissed them at first. After all they had been through, after all the vows he had renewed, could he really betray her? The night she found out the truth, Victor had just returned from yet another supposed business trip. He entered the house with the smell of expensive cologne clinging to him, a scent that was not his own. His tie was loose, his shirt wrinkled, yet his face was unreadable. Clara, holding their newborn son in her arms, watched as he casually set his suitcase down, avoiding her gaze. "Where were you, Victor?" she asked, her voice deceptively calm. "I told you business," he replied, brushing past her towards the bedroom. Clara took a deep breath and followed. "And does business involve a hotel suite with another woman?" Victor froze. He turned slowly, his eyes narrowing. "What are you talking about?" Clara reached for her phone, unlocking it with trembling fingers. She pulled up the picture her friend had sent her, Victor with his arm around a beautiful woman, leaning in close as if whispering secrets meant only for her. His face darkened. "Who sent you this?" he demanded. Clara's hands shook, but her voice didn't waver. "Does it matter? Just tell me the truth, Victor." Victor scoffed, running a hand through his hair. "So what if I did? You think I don't deserve better? Look at you, Clara. You have let yourself go. You are not the woman I married. You walk around this house in baggy clothes and dirty wrappers, always tired, always nagging. I needed something hot." Clara's heart pounded in her chest. "You needed what? To humiliate me? To betray me?" Victor's jaw tightened. "I needed a real woman, not someone tiring rapper from morning till night," Clara shouted at Victor with a response. "Victor, you are—" But before she could finish her statement, an unexpected slap landed on her cheek, something she barely registered. A burning sting spread across her cheek, and before she could recover, Victor shoved her backward. The room spun as she hit the ground, her body curling instinctively around their baby, shielding him from the violence. Victor's voice roared above her. "You should be grateful I even came back for you." Clara lay there, her cheek throbbing, her son wailing in her arms. The monster she thought she had escaped had returned. Days turned into weeks, and the nightmare Clara thought she had escaped became her reality once again. Victor had not only returned to his old ways, he had become something far worse. The man who once begged for her forgiveness, who had promised to cherish and protect her, was now a monster in every sense of the word. At first, the abuse started with cruel words, stinging insults about her weight, her looks, her worth. "You have let yourself go, Clara," he would sneer. "You are not the woman I married." Clara would lower her gaze, swallowing the pain, focusing on her children. She had thought giving Victor another chance would bring peace to her home, but instead it had shackled her in an even more terrifying prison. Then the verbal abuse turned physical. At first, it was a shove, then a forceful grip on her wrist that left bruises. Soon, Victor's wrath escalated beyond her worst fears. Each time she tried to defend herself, he reminded her of how much she owed him. "I gave you everything, and this is how you repay me," he would yell before lashing out. One evening, as she nursed their newborn son, Victor returned home late, reeking of alcohol and perfume that wasn't hers. The argument that followed erupted into a storm of rage. He accused her of making him stray, of letting herself become undesirable. Clara, exhausted and heartbroken, finally fought back with words. "I sacrificed everything for this family, and this is what I get," she cried, voice trembling with both anger and fear. Victor's response was swift and brutal. His slap sent her crashing onto the floor, the baby wailing in her arms. But he wasn't done. He dragged her up by her hair and struck her again. Pain exploded through her body as he continued his assault, his rage unchecked. The days blurred into each other, each one filled with fear, pain, and silent tears. The house that once echoed with laughter was now suffocated by the weight of Clara's suffering. Her mother had warned her, and now she understood why. Then, one fateful evening, the violence reached a peak. Victor came home in another fit of rage, accusing Clara of trying to turn their children against him. His words were venomous, his fists merciless. This time, she barely had the strength to fight back. A hard blow to her side sent her crumbling to the ground. Her vision blurred, pain ripping through her body like fire. The last thing she heard before slipping into unconsciousness was Lily's terrified screams. When Clara woke up, She was in a hospital bed, tubes attached to her body. Her mother sat beside her, eyes red from crying. The doctor's face was grim as he delivered the news. Clara had suffered internal bleeding. The damage was extensive, her organs badly injured from repeated trauma. If she hadn't been brought in when she was, she might not have survived. Tears slipped down Clara's cheeks as reality set in. This wasn't just about her anymore. If she stayed, she wouldn't live to see her children grow up. And if she left, it was the only chance she had to survive. Something had to change, and this time there would be no turning back. While Clara was still at the hospital, Victor never visited. Instead, he was busy flirting around town with different ladies. Clara spent 3 long months in the hospital, her body slowly recovering from the internal injuries caused by Victor's relentless abuse. Each day was filled with pain, both physical and emotional, but through it all she clung to one thought. She had survived. She would never allow herself to fall into Victor's hands again. Mother Teresa stayed by her side throughout, taking care of Lily and the newborn baby boy. The sight of her children gave Clara the strength to keep fighting, to push through the darkest moments of her recovery. But one thing was clear. She would not let Victor get away with what he had done to her. The day she was discharged from the hospital, Clara stood outside, feeling the warmth of the sun on her skin. It felt like a rebirth, a second chance. She took a deep breath and made a vow to make Victor pay for everything he had done to her. With the help of a human rights activist named Adeline, Clara took the first step toward justice. Adeline listened to her story with a mix of compassion and determination. "You deserve freedom, Clara," she told her, "and I'm going to help you get it." Together they filed for divorce, citing years of domestic violence, infidelity, and attempted murder. The case gained attention, and soon authorities began an investigation into Victor's actions. Witnesses came forward, neighbors who had heard her screams, friends who had suspected the truth but never spoken up, and even some of Victor's own family members who could no longer turn a blind eye. Victor was arrested and was tried in the Federal High Court on the charges of domestic violence, infidelity, and attempted murder. The courtroom was filled with tense silence as Clara took the stand, her voice steady as she recounted the horrors she had endured. The scars on her body, the medical records, and the testimonies of those who had witnessed her suffering painted a damning picture of Victor's true nature. After investigation and court case, Victor was found guilty of over 5 count charges on him. Clara felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Victor was sentenced to 10 years in prison for attempted murder and domestic violence. As Clara walked out of the courthouse, holding Lily's hand and carrying her son in her arms, Clara felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. She was free. No longer a prisoner in a toxic marriage, she embraced her new life with her children, determined to raise them in a home filled with love, not fear. It was not the ending she had once envisioned when she married Victor, but it was the beginning of something much greater, a life of strength, independence, and happiness. Clara, now free from years of torture and humiliation, and with family and friends supporting her, she was able to start a new life with her children. Clara's journey was not an easy one, but she emerged stronger than ever. Her story is a reminder that no one deserves to suffer in silence. There is always a way out, and there are people willing to help. She found the courage to break free, and now she lives a life filled with hope, love, and peace. If you or someone you know is in an abusive situation, seek help. No one should have to endure pain in the name of love. Thank you for following Clara's journey. If you enjoyed this story and want to watch more inspiring and wonderful contents, please subscribe to our channel and stay updated for more compelling stories. Until next time. Bye!